Hi, gang. Donna here. My guest today is Rhys Uhlich. He is a man of many hats. He's a teacher, model, fashion designer, actor, filmmaker, reporter, healer, husband, and father. He has the love of nature, the environment, and surfing. Some of you may know him from Make Me A Supermodel in Australia, and others from his role in Neighbours as Scotty Boland. Here in the US and UK, he is currently the spokesman for Bondi Sands. Today, I sit down and discuss his very diverse life that takes us from Australia to Bali, Los Angeles, and several points in between before we settle back in Oz, where he built his sustainable shed style dream home. Hi, how are you doing, Rhys?
Hi, I'm really good. Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. Rhys is about to, after this wraps up, he's going to go surfing. So he's ready to
Oh,
go. So we're going to have a fascinating, interesting conversation. So let's dive right in. So you were a physical education teacher.
well, I was. Yeah, I mean, I didn't do it for long. It actually feels like a past life. It feels that far removed from me, and not in a bad way. I mean, I loved it. It was such an incredible grounding. I only did it for probably 2 years. But I always say, if you can hold yourself in front of a bunch of 5-year-olds, you can hold yourself in front of anyone because they see through your bullshit straight away. So an incredible grounding for what the rest of my life has had in store and will have in store. But yes, I was. Short answer.
Did you decide you wanted to? I mean, when you were a kid, is that what you wanted to do?
I hated school as a kid, but I feel like growing up and in my early 20s, children were the only people I was comfortable around and felt like I could be me around. I think I grew up like everyone, just longing for truth and longing for the truth that I felt to be verified in my surrounds. And often adults don't do that. They'll kind of verify what comfort world they're living in, and kids just kind of say it how it is. So I was very much drawn to just hanging out with kids more than anything. So yeah, it was that kind of attracted me to it.
So how did you go from teaching, being a teacher, to deciding that I'm going to try this modeling competition?
Yeah, it was a funny story, that one, actually. And it's one of those things I don't talk about a lot for some reason. I think I was always a little bit ashamed of being on a reality show, but it's nice to look back at it now, 14 odd years later. But I was teaching and enjoying it, but I had this sense that that wasn't forever for me, and I never really modeled previously, but my wife and my mother had seen the ads on TV and kind of had tried to convince me to audition for it. I'd said no all along. They left the papers on my bed, and I think I had an afternoon off. I knew that no one would have to know if I auditioned, so I went secretly. And 40,000 people auditioned for that show, and I'm this big kind of awkward country boy, and lined up with everyone else, and I'd actually, yeah, just long story short, I seem to ramble on, I've realized, but
No,
long
it's
story short,
okay.
I'd lined up all day, and I had to get a flight. I was going on a surf trip, and I kind of went to walk away. One of the producers must have spotted me and said, "Look, where are you going?" I said, "I'm really sorry to waste your time, but I got to go." Um, they said, "Look, can we just usher you in quickly in?" They put me in front of the room, in front of all the judges, and I rocked up in my thongs, not Australian thongs, which is flip flops, not American thong, thank goodness, but in my flip flops. And they made me do a walk on the catwalk, and I remember tripping over and falling over on my flip flops, and they said, "Oh, look, sorry, but maybe you should stick to teaching." And I thought, "Oh, that's it. That was a waste of time." Walked outside, and they said, "Can we do a quick chat about how you got knocked back?" Did my interview, and as I was doing my interview, one of the judges must have walked past and heard me speak, and caught a glimpse of that, and said, "Actually, can you come back in?" And then I made that they got me through the first round, and then the rest is history. I somehow managed to win the thing from 40,000 people to me. So it's something I can look back now and be proud of, actually.
It's pretty cool. I mean, when
Mm.
you consider yourself that you were in that cattle call of 40,000 people and you won the
Yeah,
whole, that's a pretty intense thing. And yes, my cat has
yeah.
decided to join us.
I know. I love that. Beautiful.
Come here,
Um,
babe.
it's good to have the extra company.
Oh yes.
But yeah, like I said, I think I'd been ashamed of it for many years. But it's nice to look back now and say, you know what, maybe being a model for me was never something overly fulfilling, but it was nice to achieve something like that.
Mm-hmm. So when you modeled, did you model internationally or did you she must like you. She's never
I love
done
it.
this. Did you model
Oh, good.
internationally? or
Yeah, so after winning the show, I was sent to New York on a contract. Lived in New York for a year. You know, I did some shows for the likes of Calvin Klein and some decent brands, Hugo Boss, and then moved to LA. So from a little island, which is where I am right now, to kind of the bright lights of New York and then Los Angeles. It was a baptism of fire, and it was tough, but it was such an incredible learning experience. And then I moved home to join the cast of Neighbours, which you said, yeah, he's on Australian TV, but it's actually also, you're right, on UK as well. It's massive. Well, it's pretty big in the UK, and that's what keeps it going, I think.
so that must have been a whole, I mean, when you look back, like you said, it's 14 years ago, when you look
Mm.
back to that moment where you were going to walk away into
Mm.
all the things you've done, I mean, that's got to blow your mind that you've just
Yeah, it
had
makes
this.
yeah, and it makes you question things like, fate and timing. I don't
Okay.
know what happened. My device just decided to turn off.
It's
Anyway,
okay.
well,
So, I think where we were was, so looking back 14 years and this incredible journey. I mean, you went from you're about to walk away, and then now, you've done all these, you've done TV, you've done other things. So how amazing is that?
yeah, it's really incredible to look back on, and I think it's something that's stayed with me for a long time and makes you question the idea of fate and timing. And it's one of those things where, yeah, I do believe in, everything that's meant to be will come to you, but all in good time. I think we work so hard for things sometimes, and I've spent so much time since probably working hard at something and having my head, banging my head against a brick wall kind of thing. And then I look back at that and how it just flowed, and there was ease, and there was so much synchronicity. So I think that's the thing I take away from it the most, and probably the solace that, you can do so much work, but when something's meant to be, it will be. But you do need to build the structure underneath for the longevity. I think I fell into that probably without that structure, and that's something I learned pretty quick, that if you haven't got that base of self-belief and that base of you've done that hard work, then it'll come and go quite quickly.
My husband's mantra used to be go with the flow, and
Yeah, for sure.
I would laugh because it's like, yeah, yeah, but I mean, now he's been gone for a year. It's like I see that,
Oh,
yeah,
right.
you have to go with the flow. That's how
Yeah.
you survive. That's how you keep moving. So there was
And
some.
on that,
Go ahead.
sorry, just
No, go ahead.
it's a great thing your husband had said, and often seen as going with the flow, it can be perceived as being lazy, but I think that is harder. That's working hard, because going with the flow and taking away your own control and actually letting go shows more faith. Whatever you believe in shows more faith and hard work than anything. So I think he was 100% right with that.
I agree. I mean, now looking back as you did, I agree. One thing, when I was doing my deep dive on stuff that you've done, one of the short films that you did that really did hold a lot of meaning for me, and I don't know if you actually turned into a show or what was behind that, but I think it was your part of your filmmaking thing, was the street eat, where
Yeah.
I mean, because you see people bringing homeless people meals all the time, but the fact that you were willing to make that emotional connection and give them something that brought a memory of joy to them was very powerful when I watched that.
Thank you for saying that. I think I was really nervous. It was a concept that I came up with on the plane on the way to LA, but I was really nervous to do that because I didn't want it to be seen as, yeah, just detached and using the person that we spoke to gain something. I wanted it to be the other way around. So, but I was really pleasantly surprised. I think if you go into something with the right intention, then you'll be given the right result. So I hope, hopefully that's a reflection of the intention I went into it. But we were gifted that story. I mean, Mike, the homeless man, came up to me, when we were filming, and it was just beautiful. So the whole premise of the story was really testing the theory that food brings people together. It's one of those universal sayings, but for me, it's like, well, what about the people that society have forgotten? Can food be that conduit to tell a story? And yeah, I think for that particular story, it really was. Whether we're putting together that documentary now, a 1 hour doco on Mike, who's since passed. So it's an I feel very grateful to have that part of his story, and I actually feel an obligation to now tell it. So yeah, we'll put that together, and then we'll see if we can turn that into something. Yeah, I believe it's got some legs. I think for me, it's about, I have so many things going on in my life. It's like definitely giving each one the credit it deserves, and that one just needs a lot of time and effort. But it was a beautiful story. The guy, he's a homeless man, but he calls himself a foodie because he has so much experience with all different types of food. He doesn't really know what he's going to get most days, which only enhances his palate, and he actually became quite critical of the things that he was finding, and I found that incredible. He was able to like really nut down the ingredients that were in it, and the whole idea, it wasn't just about the food, it was then to open them up to be able to talk about their life experiences and who they are and what makes them tick, and show that connection that we all share, even the people you step over in the street. So I thank you for saying that. It's something I'm really proud that we did, and something I really want to bring to fruition.
Well, I think you should. I mean, I think it's a very powerful piece. And as you were saying, so many times we see these little clips of somebody giving somebody food, and it
Yeah.
doesn't resonate because you're doing it for your attention. It's not because you're doing it to make that connection. You're doing it. You may be doing it out of generosity, but if you're filming it with your cell phone to like, look what I did, that's not the same intention as what you did. You did something to make that connection, and you could see the joy in his face, and you could see, the connection that it brought back that memory.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think my feel is that everyone in this world just wants to be heard. They've all got a story to tell and they want to be heard. So I've spent my whole life trying to work out what my purpose is. And for me, it's storytelling. There's no, whether it's telling my own story or telling someone else's, nothing lights me up more than providing a platform for a story to be told. And I feel like everyone wants to be able to tell their story.
I would agree. I would agree. I think that's why I have this podcast, is because so many people have a story where they can look back and go, was it better to do this or better to do that?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it gives them a chance to explore that.
And through storytelling, you're able to connect to people, So through Mike, the homeless man, telling his story, there was so many elements. It was like, oh wow, I'm like that. Oh yeah, that reminds me of something I'd done. And that storytelling breaks that barrier, I think.
Yeah, I
And,
mean,
mm.
go ahead.
No, it just makes you realize that you actually have something in common with people from all walks of life, and that's just so, we forget that as a society. I think we put ourselves we segregate into groups, and whether that's race or marital status or where you live or how you live, and it's that for me is like the biggest blight on our world right now, is breaking down those barriers.
I've talked about that a couple of times on the show because, now that my husband has passed, I'm now a widowed.
Mm,
And it's
mm.
in the United States, it's not that I'm just that per life. It's like it's in my car insurance. It's when I file taxes. It is
Oh,
all
wow.
over the place. It's like I might as well have a scarlet A on my chest because now I'm
Yeah,
a widow. When I
yeah,
divorced my first husband, I went back to being single. There was
yeah,
no reason for
yeah,
it to be labeled. So I totally agree. I think we put ourselves in these little boxes and we need to get out of that. We really
yeah,
do. We're all
yeah.
people. We're all human, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. I often think of, Avatar, the movie, and I feel like it is, other than everyone being blue, it is so close to, to the truth of where we are as a society. And, it's films like that really inspire me. And I think they're closer to the reality than we think.
So you went to China for a travel segment.
I did, yeah, yeah. So yeah, modeled, then moved to Neighbours, which is it's like a TV soap, kind of like Bold and the Beautiful in America, I guess. And then was offered a travel show gig, which is something I immensely enjoyed. I remember the China one; we got to go and hang out with baby pandas, and one of those jobs where you probably don't appreciate it at the time, but now I don't have it, I miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I saw the China one, and they were bringing all the food, and I understand some of this is scripted and playful, but it was
yeah,
fun. And
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure during that whole career, you got to see some amazing places.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a lot of Australia, a fair bit of international as well, and places like China where maybe, I don't know, like as an Australian, you have this preconception that Chinese are very like single-minded, strong individuals, and they are. But you go there, and they've got to be. It is so many people there. They've got to be like they've got to push for what they want. But it's almost like when going to China and seeing those people, and then they almost there's that you kind of push them back a little bit, and there's respect there, and they soften. So I think it really. again, kind of broke down some stereotypes for me, seeing all these different places. And China's somewhere I never really had an urge to go, but it's so incredibly beautiful, and they do incredibly amazing things with the panda population, and I have a lot of respect for the Chinese people now.
The only time I've ever gotten to see pandas was
Yeah,
at the Washington D.C. Zoo, which was pretty
cool.
amazing.
They are
But
amazing.
yeah, I mean,
Mm.
to be able to go place, that's the one thing about your job. I mean, whether it be the modeling or the acting or the reporting, you got to go places where you never thought you would, and that is a gift in itself, because there's some people that don't even want to experience that. You know, they
100% agree. Mm.
so I mean, you're broadening your horizons. Um, so you also, since you're an avid surfer, there were some pictures I saw that you were surfing near a whale.
Yeah, actually, not far from where I am right now. So where I live on Phillip Island is right down the bottom of Australia. So it's between the mainland Australia and Tasmania, which is one of our states off Australia. We're pretty close to Antarctica. So we get up to 90 to 100 in summer, and down quite cold, not snowing, but quite cold in winter. We have the rugged Bass Strait below us, and every winter, which is right now here, we have the whale swimming past. I've had a couple of experiences, one on my own at a place called Pyramid Rock, where I was surfing on my own, obviously, and then a mother and calf killer whale came within 5 meters of me, and
Oh
I
wow.
surfed with them. And it's just that was an incredible experience where you just feel in awe. And I think things, you have perspective in life when you see beasts of the ocean and of the world like that, and the peace that they have, this knowingness, this there's something about their energy, hearing their spurt, being that close, you can hear that and hear them breathing. It really humbles you. I don't know whether your viewers will get the video feed, but after that experience, I had a whale tattooed on
Oh
on
nice.
my arm. I feel like in a lot of ways they're my spirit animal. And another time, which I think a photo you may have seen, is I watched them for about half an hour swimming up and back. I thought, you know what, I've got to get out there, and I grabbed my board and wetsuit and paddled out with them and sat with them for about an hour. And I've just been really lucky. I feel like in a lot of ways they've come to help me heal. So I have a lot of I'm in awe with the whales.
Like I mean, between the whale pictures and some of the sunset pictures you posted, I mean, you know, I can see where your connection is with nature and the environment and the beauty of life. Like it's
Yeah, I think it's so much to learn from nature. I feel like I often say that the ocean growing up was like a third parent for me. And strangely, although the tides and the winds and the waves are ever changing, there's something so consistent and reliable about it. Maybe even more so than my parents. I hope they don't mind me saying that, but yeah, there's something about nature that just holds you. Whether it's the ocean, the hills, either one, they have that same constant energy. And we probably, as a species, need to go and lean into nature more.
there's times when I used to bring, because I live out in farm country, so there's a lot of farm fields around me, and I would be driving back home from my picking up my husband from dialysis and just watching the sunset. The
Yeah.
colors that are painted in the sky. And my husband was legally blind, so at a certain
Mm,
point, he really couldn't see it.
yeah.
So it was kind of hard to sit there and go, "Wow, look at the sunset," and then you have to describe it, and you're never going to
Yeah.
describe it exactly how it is.
I know. It's just those. That would have been really tough for you to do, and I think things like the sunset, they're so, like you said, they're so unquantifiable that it makes you realize the magic of life, because you there's nothing you can say that will justify those
No,
moments.
no. No, but then there's so many moments that are like that. I want to go back to, so your mom and your wife wanted to put you in the contest. What did they say when you won?
They may have regretted it because I went missing for about 5 years after
Yeah.
I won that. But uh, mum, mum was happy but worried. I don't know why. Worried that I'd probably get lost in that world, and I probably did for a while. And my wife, she's always supported me, so she was happy for me. She wasn't my wife at the time, and so we split up. I went overseas. We got back together. We had a child. Then we got married. So it's been quite the journey for us, incredible journey for us. I could write a book about that, and she's in fact written a book about that. Um, but yeah, so they were happy and nervous.
I mean, well, the whole world of the modeling industry is intense. And I mean, how did your self esteem handle all that? I mean, did you ever buy
Yeah.
into it, or were you just kind of like, whatever?
Oh, I think the main problem for me is I went in with a lack of self-worth, so it'll find you out really quickly. And if you base your self-worth on how many modeling campaigns you get or how people see you aesthetically, then it's going to really hurt. And I was someone that always felt like I had a lot to give, truth-wise, but it felt like I didn't have the platform modeling. So it was very. I definitely resented it. I definitely came to resent it more, but it wasn't because of the industry. It was probably more how I went into it. So now that I'm 37, that show was 12, 13 years ago. I'm modeling now more than ever, strangely, but I'm enjoying the relationships. I'm enjoying the conversations. I'm enjoying what I can bring to those conversations as well. And it just goes to show you, it doesn't really matter what career you're in. If you're in and coming from a place of intention and worth, then yeah, it'll reward you.
You launched your own fashion label, correct?
I did. I did. I feel like, looking back, it's a bit of a reflection on how many different things I've done, and sometimes it's like, oh, have I done too many things? Should I just focused on
Nah.
one? But yeah, I love like, for me, I see creativity. It's the same fire within. We all have it in our belly, and whether it's a fashion label or whatever it may be, it's the same fire that you're looking to express. So that's all that was. I launched a bohemian surf label in 2012 called Tevita. It was made out of Bali in Indonesia, and before long, we were in 100 stores in Australia, which is kind of big for Australia. And I was like, whoa, I didn't realize people would want this. But quite often, if you create something that you can't find and you want, other people will want it too. So it did really well. Taught me a lot about structure, and again, like the need to have structure for something to have longevity, because it lasted 5 years, did really well. I just got burnt out after those 5 years, and the fashion industry is so fickle. You're only as good as your last range, and it's
Yeah.
kind of not why I did it. I did it to express myself, but it was a fun ride nonetheless. We still have a factory in Bali and some stores, and we did some really cool things. Like, we got to bring over people from Java and house them, feed them, and pay them, and kind of the humanitarian side was more rewarding than the fashion side for me.
Well, once again, you took something that normally you wouldn't have a humanitarian portion to it, and you added to it. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, it makes me realize what drives me, I guess. So it is the creativity, but it's also giving back. But in saying that, I'm someone that is, over my life, I've been really scared of losing control. So I've always wanted, I've gone through stages of wanting to feed wanting to give to myself before I give to others, because I'm scared. I'm scared of lack, like a lot of people are. So I'm definitely not this Mother Teresa figure, but I'm trying to learn to really trust that I'll be okay and to give back first.
you had a place called Island Healing, did you
Yeah,
not?
we still do. Yeah,
Do
good.
you?
You've
Okay.
done your research. Yeah,
Yeah.
so Island Healing is a holistic healing center on Phillip Island where we live, and we created that just before COVID. So it's been a tough 18 months, but I think it'll be more relevant than ever coming out of this. It's a holistic healing center for anything from organic fruit and veg to yoga, meditation, counseling, a whole lot of holistic therapies under one roof, like a holistic hospital we're trying to create down there. And it's bloody hard work. It's draining us, but I do believe that the world needs more of these places.
I would agree. I would agree.
Yeah,
My friend had a yoga studio in town, and I had a little metaphysical shop. And COVID,
amazing.
we both closed it down because it was just
Yeah,
there
I
was
know. I
nothing
had
to
this
do.
conversation with my wife this morning. She's like, "We're still losing money." I'm like, and money's only one thing, but there's only so far you can go, because we just keep getting shut down in Australia. We keep, no one can travel within Australia. They're all in their bubbles, so we're not getting the market. And it is what it is. Everyone's in the same boat. So it's like, but where do you draw the line? Like, how hard do you push? And I do believe this is the right thing, but like, yeah, we're at that stage of like, how far do we push this? So it is right at the edge at the moment.
Understand. Understand.
Yeah.
There was something I was going to ask you that it just went like that. So,
Yeah.
there was a movie that I saw on your. Yes, I did research. Blowback. Whatever happened with that?
Yeah, it was. That's a funny one. Acting is something I really enjoy, and I enjoy more so probably for the. It's like a therapy for me. Getting to play characters that I was always raised as the nice guy, the good guy. So we've all got darkness in us. We've all got like the you know the abuser, the kind person, everyone. So I want to raise those archetypes out of me. And yeah, I did a lot of acting over in New York. Signed onto a film called Blowback, and just like anything in Hollywood, it fell over the last minute. And I kind of something I always wish it happened, but it never did. they had a guy called Ron Perlman as the main actor, and he's a great actor over there. I did a bit of work with him leading up to it, and then yeah, last minute he signed on to, I think, was it Sons of Anarchy, whatever he did, and he kind of had to remove himself from that, and then that was it. That was the end of it.
That's
Yeah,
unfortunate. I mean, I
yeah.
was on a project. I used to back in the '90s. I was part of a television production, and I know how those things get crazy.
Yeah, I think there's just one thing I've learned, even in the modeling industry, when you're on hold for a job, I don't expect anything until I'm on set starting day one. That and I think the more that I've let go to that, and the more that I don't need that, the more I get the work. So there's something in that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's I have a friend who is a touring musician, and he will never tell you who he's playing with until after he is actually on
Mm.
tour because he's like, I don't want to jinx it. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
want to
very
jinx it.
very true. Yeah, yeah. There's something in that, isn't there? That people
Yeah.
often say that keep it sacred. If you have some news, keep it sacred because, well, on one hand, other people, if there's feelings of jealousy, they might drain the energy from it, and all sorts of things. And keeping it sacred shows that you want it for the right reasons as well. You just want it for you.
And I mean, that's the thing, one thing that I had a neuroscientist on not too long ago, and we talked
Yeah,
about intuition and how
yeah.
we're all connected and the energy work and everything. And a lot of people don't see that energy, but there's so much energy we put out and expel on certain things that we shouldn't. We're
Yeah.
so caught up in, dare I say, social media a lot of the times that we miss the real stuff.
I agree. Like there's so much to be said for that, for really having that laser focus and that worth. And it's funnily enough. So just a quick story. I grew up on Phillip Island, same as a couple of brothers, well, three of them called Chris and Liam Hemsworth, who are quite
Okay.
well known in the Hollywood circles. So Chris is Thor, and I don't know, he's done heaps of movies. Anyway, grew up with those guys. So looking back now, I can see in particular with Chris, who's now a Hollywood megastar. He's doing incredibly well. He always had this. No, he knew what he wanted, he knew what he was worth, and he wasn't afraid to say no to things that 99% of other people would have said yes to because of the money, because it was, but he knew that that wasn't serving his end goal. And I think there's something to be said for that, for knowing your worth. And I think what you say no to, you get beyond. So I don't think I've ever met anyone in my life that was as good at saying no as him. And maybe he's not the best actor ever, but he just had this laser focus, this worth. He had this always had this worth about what he wanted and what he could get, and was not afraid to say no to anything other than what that was.
Someone told me not so long ago that your rejection is your protection. And I
Yeah.
mean, that's not exactly the same thing as saying no, but in a
No.
way it is because you're
Yeah.
rejecting that other thing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes your
Agreed.
rejection is your protection.
Yeah.
Um, one thing I want to talk about is your house.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I know the articles say you did it for 100,000, and you've written that you've done it for 117. Either way, it's a magnificent house. Was this something that you always dreamt of?
Just another one of those creative fire things that I talked about before. I think it never been a builder, never, but I love thinking outside the square, and I love pushing boundaries, I guess. And that was just born through necessity. So basically, for the listeners, what it is, it's a look. It's probably hard to translate into American terms, but it's a shed, so like a barn structure that I had engineered to a residential standard. So it looks and feels very much like a barn or a shed, but it's classified as a home. So I guess in Australia, a lot of people will buy a farm, and it's probably similar in the States, where there'll be an old barn or an old shed and they'll do it up and live in it. For me, it's about, I wanted to capture that feeling of that old barn, but with a new build. But, one of the great motivating factors of that is the incredible savings. So because I went straight to a shed or a barn company, you're saving on pre-engineered materials. You're working within their constraints, but you're saving incredibly. So what would have been maybe a $300,000 or $400,000 home, I got to do for 117 because of the pre-engineering, because of all of that. Um, and for me, it's just all about, if I think true creativity is what you can do with less. So for me, it was about really opening up that Australian housing market, because the $100,000 to $200,000 housing market doesn't exist, and I guess that equates to about 60 or 70,000 US dollars. So yeah, I forgot where I was going with that, but it was driven through necessity. We had a certain amount of money in the bank. I just got back from LA. I felt really down about myself. My acting dream had failed. Blowback didn't get up. All those things didn't happen. But I didn't want to stop being creative. So we had to build a house for my wife and two beautiful kids. We only had $100,000 in the bank. I didn't want to have a mortgage. I didn't want to be part of that system anymore. So through necessity, I kind of thought, what can I do? And that thing was a result. Managed to get on the front cover of Australia's biggest real estate magazine. I'm not a builder. I felt really silly about getting that coverage, but now I'm dealing with hundreds of inquiries to help others build the same way. It's overwhelming, but if I can focus on, I keep using the word intention, but if I can focus on why I want to do it, I think it could be anything.
Well, and from the article that I read, it talked about the fact that you went to you. I don't want to say Facebook sale, but something
Yeah,
along those lines where you would
yeah,
contact other people and said, "Okay, you have this stuff, this extra stuff. Can I have it?"
yeah, basically, because I feel like the building industry in Australia, maybe in America too, it's so wasteful. There's so
Oh, it
much that
is.
gets started. So, a window may be a millimeter out, and they're like, "Yep, it's got to go." And they'll quite often throw it out or sell it for next to nothing. So, my whole ethos was with the build was get the shed structure up, get the cladding up, and then everything else is recycled. So the safe structure is up. I use the term adult doll's house because basically that's what it is. The safe structure is up, and then you get to play with the rest. And I wanted to reconnect to that sense of play. So we created something based on what I found, what was around me. And I think that I spent a lot of time through my fashion label in Bali, and I always admired how resourceful the Balinese were. They built with what was around them. And I feel like the Western building industry doesn't do that. More money you spend, the better it is. And I don't think that is always the case.
You were talking about the barns here in America. Unfortunately, a
Yeah,
lot of the older barns now,
yeah,
there was this big push a few years ago about taking barn wood and
yeah,
repurposing it in your house.
yeah.
So
Okay.
people are taking down these old barns
Yeah.
so
See,
they could
they're
reclaim the
losing
wood.
they're losing the magic. The magic is
Exactly.
in the barns. And again, I use the word playfulness. There's a certain playfulness about living in a barn or a shed with those mezzanines and everything's so open, and it's a very inclusive way to live. So that's basically what I wanted to recreate, but recreate in a new home that you could borrow on and create a system where that still works.
So how long have you been surfing for?
I've been surfing, well, strangely, only since I was 18, but I've been going in the ocean every day since I was a kid. I didn't start surfing till later, but now it's my meditation, it's my solace, and it's my exercise. And without it, I think so much. It's the only time I don't think is when I'm in the water. So I'd probably self-combust with overthinking if I didn't have surfing.
I understand. So,
Yeah.
with all this thinking, do you ever try to write?
I need to write. I love writing, but there's such a block and this silly, stubborn block in me in writing, and I've been told I need to do that a lot. Um, it's probably, yeah, no, I need to do it. I'm one of those people that will pick up my phone and lose myself in my phone, or if I could start writing and meditating, I think I could put all these thoughts into a really manageable space.
Well, meditation is always, if you have monkey mind to begin with, where your mind is constantly going,
Yeah,
meditation is just, it's a circus waiting to happen because as soon as you close your eyes, your mind is going off to
I
go, oh,
know.
I should be doing this.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know how to get past that stage, and that's where I've struggled.
They always say what you should do is keep going. Just
Yeah,
stop, refocus, and keep going. And I haven't been successful yet. I wish I
yeah,
was, but
same, same.
um,
So for me, just on that story, for me, surfing for me is my meditation because when you're on a wave, you're reacting in the moment, if not before the moment, to what the wave is doing. You have to be. So there can be no other thoughts in your mind. And that's where the rest is for me. So strangely, even though physically I'm exerting myself, I'm resting while I'm surfing.
mhm.
I'm resting my mind, and then I'll come back home, and then I'll have so much clarity around what I need to do. So
well,
yeah,
and
that is my meditation.
and see that's the thing. Meditation can take all forms. So if that's your
Yeah.
meditation, then that works. As far as what I was going to go back to writing for a second, you were talking about exercising these characters that you have in your mind and whatnot.
Mm.
The very first book I wrote, My Days with the Dark Muse, is written. It's a guy's journal, a drug addict's journal.
Wow.
And if you look at
Yeah.
me, you wouldn't think that I
Yeah.
had that in there. And I've
Yeah.
had people say, "A girl wrote this, a woman wrote this." Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
So what I'm
From
getting
your
at,
own experiences?
no.
No.
No,
Yeah.
I honestly, I sat down and he came and I wrote
Yeah.
and
Yeah. You channel. Oh, sorry. A guy's drive. Yeah, it's incredible. So you obviously were just channeling that universal darkness within that we all share. That's an incredible reflection.
So that's what I'm saying. If you have these characters in there, I know there's a block, but if you sat
Mm.
down and took maybe 5-10 minutes a day and you decided, hey, I can do this.
Yeah, no, it's incredible advice, and I think if there's one thing I need to bring into my life right now, it would be that for
It'll
sure.
just it'll get it out. And the one thing, because you're an actor and I know this, I was taking acting classes, and
Mm.
I look at my writing as I look at acting, and that one rule of live in the moment.
Mm.
So when I go to write, I am playing that character in my head.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Mm.
that's what I would suggest you doing. So how long did you live in Bali for?
On and off for about 2 years, but I've been going there since I was 4, so I've been going there for 33 years, on and off. So I have a real affinity to Bali, and maybe I had a past life there or something. I feel so closely connected to the Balinese people and their thinking and their way of life. And yeah, like I said before, their resourcefulness is something I think that they could teach the rest of the world.
So, I don't want to keep you because I know that you're itching to go surfing, but I am
No,
enjoying
it's
this.
okay.
Um,
All
so
good.
you did another piece, on your on your film production. There was
Mm.
another piece, the spiritual enlightenment. What precipitated that?
Ah, I think that was called Woke. So I guess that was a light-hearted look at my own and everyone's journey to enlightenment, and perhaps how there can be some spiritual bypassing, and potentially people like to hide behind spirituality, and myself included. I've hidden behind it plenty of times, whereas yeah, you can't bypass any of your own growth. I think that you have to sit within it, you have to move through it. And I think that was just a look at that. It was also just a few young actors, well, no, not young, a few actors in Hollywood trying to just at least keep some creative work going. So we filmed that in Joshua Tree, and it was just a lighthearted look at where the world was currently at that stage, I think.
Are you planning on doing more little productions besides the one you were talking about earlier?
Yeah. So if I'm really honest, my dream, I guess, is to really turn what I'm doing with Shed House into something that can set myself up to start a production company of my own that can make a serious impact in storytelling, whether it's through documentary or through film. So I think that my time in LA, although seemingly failed, showed me that maybe I'm meant to be me in this life and do it my way. So that's what I'm planning to do. I think this shared experience was gifted to me by someone. Like your book, it just flowed through me, and I need to honor that. And my dream is always storytelling, but I was able to use my storytelling throughout the shed journey, throughout the way I shared that. Yeah, and I just have a feeling that this will go well, and I'll be able to start something of my own.
Well, and not only that, the people that you actually help build these homes with, they may
Mm.
have stories that you can end up using.
That's exactly right. So what I'm pitching at the moment is funny you say that is a TV show to the Australian market, Shed House Australia, where we follow everyday Australians' journey to build their dream home. Not $1 million dream home, something for less that still is just as unique. And I agree, telling their stories is probably the shed is just the conduit to the storytelling.
That and see,
Yeah,
people will tune in for that. I mean, I haven't really watched a lot, but we have those HG shows here where they're like, okay,
yeah,
you have a $500,000 budget. It's like, what?
yeah. Yeah, I know
Who's
it.
got
I know
that?
it. Exactly. Exactly. They're nice to watch, but they're just so unrelatable. We have a show in Australia called Grand Designs, which is the same thing. It is so popular, but they're all $1 million houses. So for me, I want to create something quite similar, but for the everyday Australian.
And I think that has a lot of value to it. People actually
Mm.
looking at creating something that people can afford. I mean,
Yeah.
I know people in the states that before the housing market, they had a $40,000 a year job and they bought a $500,000 house.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
just because
Yeah.
somebody gives you a loan doesn't mean you should take it.
And I feel like we're in a very similar position in Australia right now, where the government just keep printing money, and they keep like propping everyone up, lowering the interest rates, and the bank keep lending, and they're just trying to like create this false sense of security. But it's just like it's on a nice edge. And people don't realize that if interest rates rise even 1%, 20% of the market can't afford their mortgages anymore. So I think that yeah, a concept like shared house will become more and more relevant in this world, and for a variety of reasons. I think on number one, people are wanting to remove themselves from the system a little more, a system that maybe has failed them a little bit in recent years. So they want to have more autonomy. So if they have less of a mortgage, that's a start. And they can be more creative with this experience as well, and they can go completely off grid as well for a lot more be a lot more affordable than what off grid generally means, which in Australia it means $600,000 minimum to go off
Wow.
grid. So, yeah, so all of that.
Well, and also your houses, we have the big tiny house craze here. This actually, your
Yeah,
house has some space to it. So if you do
yeah,
have a family, you're not on top of everybody.
agree. It's like a medium house, I like to call it. So it's like it's that in between, whereas tiny house definitely has some relevance, but not everyone can live in such a small space. So it's I think with the shed house, you just create just what you need, no more.
And that makes sense. That makes sense.
Mm.
So let's see. You have the filmmaking project, you have Shed House, which you're going to kind of tie together, and you're doing
Yeah,
modeling. So you're quite the busy
yeah.
guy. Quite the busy
Yeah,
guy.
I am. I am. But it's funny, like I still manage to surf every single day. I haven't missed a day in many, many a year. So I think it just goes to show that yeah, there's time for everything. I'm just trying to find that balance right now between just finding happiness in the nothingness as well, because like you said before, that monkey mind, it can always be thinking, oh, but what next, and what if I don't do that? But I don't want to miss the moments as an actor, like you said, or as a writer in the moment right now, because that's all we really have.
Yeah.
Easy to say that, another thing to live it though. I say that a lot, but living it's another thing.
Well, and this is you're talking about that moment, and this popped in my head, so I'm going to share it. Before my husband passed, about a year before my husband passed, we were told he was on borrowed time. He had a long, lengthy illness, but we were told he's on borrowed time. And whether I knew it or not, I had taken this whole journey of every day. I didn't realize if this was going to be the day.
Yeah.
And the day it happened, I picked him up from dialysis. He thought his sugar was low, and I went and got him something at Burger King to drink and
Mm.
something to eat, and he passed in the car.
Wow.
So,
Mm.
I take this and talking about living in the moment, take every moment you have with your wife and your kids, your family, and treasure it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, incredible advice and incredible story.
And when you're out there, you say you haven't missed a day of surfing. That tells me right there that yes, that is your meditation. That
Yeah.
that's your Zen space, and you're lucky to
Mm.
have it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's funny though, society makes you think that if your day revolves around something like that, then you're failing or you're lazy. But for me, it's just been about giving myself permission, which I still struggle with every day, that I'm allowed to do this. In fact, I need to do this. And this is my practice. This is my faith. This is my devotion. This is everything that as humans we need. So yeah, I think if there's one piece of advice I can leave, it's just to give yourself permission to do what makes you happy. That should be number one for you, and the rest will take care of itself, I think. But we're probably conditioned to go the other way. But I think
Yeah.
start with your happiness, start with your peace, give yourself permission to do that. Just take away the shame or the guilt, and then the rest will flow.
And see, those are the things: guilt, shame, and you
Oh,
missed one: fear.
yeah. Yeah, I was going to say fear,
Yeah,
because they're all the same thing, aren't they?
yeah,
They're all like bundled up, and you just give them different names.
yeah. And
It's
then
the same thing.
to get out of it, it's like you have to unknot this whole ball because the
Mm.
older you get, the more that builds.
I know. It's sad. I even think now, like probably more of my surfs that I have than not, I have twinges of guilt or shame, or so I'm still dealing with it, and that it's a bit sad that I have to still deal with my own internal battles while doing something so beautiful like dancing in nature. Like that's what surfing is. Like, why is that a bad thing? So yeah, maybe that can resonate with other people out there, and they can kind of try and liberate themselves to work on what makes them feel those feelings, and then release them.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing I think we get so bogged down that we don't get in touch with our feelings. We are just constantly going, 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 that we never
Mm,
actually stop, breathe, and say, okay, what do I want to make me happy?
mm, mm.
Where do I see
It's
myself?
never. I know it
Okay.
never been more relevant than now, I think.
Yeah.
Mm,
I mean, this
yeah,
whole pandemic thing changed our world. And
it
so
did,
now,
and our perspectives.
yeah, yeah, you
Yeah,
have to everything that you once did, you can't necessarily do. And
yeah,
that's a shame. That's a shame.
yeah. But also, like, I think I used the word liberate a lot the last few minutes, but like, I hope that it's liberated a lot of people just to go for their end goal and go for it now. don't wait, because if your dream is to live off grid in a farm or whatever, why not? Like, why don't you deserve that? You deserve that happiness. So I think that hopefully a lot of people are taking away that. But at the forefront of it all is, like you use the word fear. That's what's being delivered to us on the surface. But if we can look beyond and liberate ourselves to have what we truly want, go for it now. Like, tomorrow may not come.
There's one thing, and I'll tell you this because a guest I had, he was talking about stress. He told me, he's like, my son got out of high school and he's like panicked because he's going to go to, he doesn't know if he wants to go to college or what he wants to do. He's like, and I told him one thing. He's like, and he says, what I told him was, if you could do anything and know that you were not going to fail, what would you
Mm,
do?
mm,
And
mm.
when you really look at that big picture, I mean, if somebody told you you can do anything you want and you're not going to fail, what do you want to do? It really
Yeah.
makes your mind expand because there's so many possibilities then.
I know, I agree. And you can even go a step further and say, if you could do anything and know that you'd be financially supported, what would you do? Because I would argue that if you take that step first and take that risk first, you will be supported. So it's just about taking that step, seeing through the fear and stepping before you think you're ready. I mean, that's the key, I think. But you're right, like those analogies, it makes you really question, wow, why do I hold myself back?
Yeah.
Like, what, that doesn't make sense.
It comes from conditioning. It comes from
I
conditioning
know.
of our families. It comes from conditioning of society, schooling, all
Yeah.
those things that just kind of said,
Everything.
you can't do
Yeah.
that. You're not good enough.
I
You're
know.
not that.
It's just sad. I find that so sad that we're all these incredible creative beings and we're living at a 30% of our capacity,
Yeah.
whatever it is, and it's just that for me is sad.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
It is because
Mm,
if we all actually focused on the positive and being
mm,
creative, can you imagine what this world would be like?
Oh my God. It'd be a walking manifestation. There'd just be people walking around manifesting their greatest dreams.
Yeah.
And that's what's possible.
Yeah. It would be amazing.
Mm, mm,
Um, well, I thank you. I thank Sandy for putting us together. And
yeah.
I thank you for the conversation. It's been brilliant and fun. And I don't want to keep you much longer because I know you want to go surfing. So
No,
I'm
no, not at all. Right back at you. And thank you. It's always lovely to have conversations like this. So I really appreciate it.